Hello. Hello. Anyone around here speak basketball? This is Adam Silver.
Vision 6-9. Welcome to the Confederacy of Dunks
Basketball Podcast.
I am your host, Freddie Rivas. And who, sir, looking good with a blue light in the back are you?
Oh, yeah, getting a little, I got the colored lights. I'm the producer, Matt Duncan. I figure why not put a little bit of a fun glow back there for the kids at home. If you're watching on the old YouTube, Fred, how are you doing here in mid-November?
I am doing good. I am excited for, the Raptors to get a bit of a breather. They've been super injured, which we will talk about.
Nice.
And I'm excited for this episode. I feel like
Yeah.
we should dive right in.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get the guests rolling.
Okay. I will say before we get going, free Brittany Griner. And let's bring on guest number one. He's done this podcast many times. A hilarious comedian. You probably know him from the CBC baking show. Wonderful basketball player. Can still dunk, I believe. Probably has to ice down his knees afterwards. Also started a fun basketball podcast recently called The Extremely Mid-Range Show. I did a one episode with him. I also did a Quiplash episode, which was just incredible fun with a bunch of, fun Raptors and basketball names. Give it up as loud as you can, even if you're at home alone, for Alan Shane Lewis.
Boop, boop, doodle, boop, boop, doodle. I forgot to add the tracks into my mixer.
Oh, I was like, Matt is really, this is a big lead-in.
I was like, oh, wow, this is an acoustic. I appreciate that.
Please leave us a comment if you want Matt to do that forever, because that was great.
That was good. Thank you
Alan,
for having me again.
Yeah, man. No problem. Thanks for joining. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. The pleasure's all mine.
Yeah, pleasure. Who wants to say the full word? It's just pleasure now.
Avec pleasure,
Avec pleasure. I pledge my allegiance. Okay. Let's bring on guest number two. It's his second time on the podcast. I'm absolutely jacked for what Matt's gonna do for the lead in here. He is a major force on Raptors Twitter, hardcore Raptors fan. You probably know his Koloko tracker, his Scotty Barnes tracker.
I love it.
He's worked for The Score, Raptors HQ, Bleacher Report. And yeah, we're super pumped to have him back. Give it up as loud as you can, even if you're at home alone, for Chris Walder.
Love
it.
This is
they
the
did
best.
a dope intro like that. That's awesome.
This is who we are now. It's Matt just scatting.
This has never happened.
This is the best day of my life. Chris, how are you? Thanks for joining again, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm bringing the lemon pledge here today. Is that a word? I guess we're just running with pledge now.
Yeah,
I don't know. I
just
couldn't
go
come
with
up with any
pledge,
other
yeah.
pledge words here.
Yeah,
That's what I'm bringing to the table here. But no, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
yeah, man. I'm pumped to have you back. All I can think about is what is Matt gonna do next. I don't know if he has. I don't know if he has the classic Raptors sting, or he's just gonna like impersonate Weird Al. This should be exciting. Let's dive right into it. Maddie, give me your best, weirdest Raptors sting.
Hey, Bobby Webster.
Okay. I love how it's not less weird.
Ready? Don't forget.
Trust in Messiah.
Right. Shout out to Daniel Radcliffe doing all these fun Weird Al voices for us. Chris, let's start with you. Obviously, this is something that no fan wants, like this idea that, we are a team that is severely injured or sick or both. I think we're probably one of the most injured teams in the NBA so far, if not the most injured team. Thankfully, no season-ending injuries or anything like that, but some substantial ones. But I want to kind of that's hard to talk about because that's just sort of a fact of basketball, and you can't fully control it. And of course, we've talked about who's filling in the gaps before already on the pod here. But yeah, from with that aside, what are you seeing so far this season that you would say, besides injuries, is worrying you the most?
Let me just preface this by saying that when I saw that Scotty Barnes news come out today with like his sprained knee, I think my heart sank. I was like, this
Yes.
team cannot afford to lose, even for like a single game.
No,
Like I feel like it's just like piling on top of each other, all of
we're
these
so
like
thin.
lingering issues, and like the illness too. It sounds like it was like the flu or something was
Yeah.
going through the roster. But excluding that, which easier said than done, because that's like one of the biggest, if not the biggest storyline this season
It
for
is,
the Toronto
yeah.
Raptors. I was highly optimistic about the second unit heading into this season. I thought our depth was really strong. I was expecting kind of some of these big come ups from Delano Banton, Malachi
Mhm.
Flynn. Obviously, the reemergence of Precious Achua, for example, but the second unit still kind of continues to be a lingering problem. I
Yeah.
looked at the stats. I think they're 23rd in the league right now in points per game, which is actually higher than I thought they would rank at this point. And the reason I'm concerned with that is because Nick Nurse has this kind of short leash for a lot of his guys, specifically like the Bantons and the Flynns of the world. Obviously,
Yes.
this recent stretch is kind of an anomaly because everyone's been hurt and you have to play these guys like 25, 30 minutes a night. And, Banton had a strong showing against Detroit. Malachi Flynn has had some really good offensive outbursts off the bench. But at the same time, when this roster is healthy, how much of that momentum is going to carry over? And I say that strongly because we look at a guy like Fred VanVleet, who's still second in the NBA in minutes per game, and Pascal Siakam would be right there with him. He's obviously missed some time, so he's currently not ranking in that category. I feel like the longer we go into the season, once this roster does slowly but surely start to get healthy, is Nick Nurse going to be trusting more of those second unit guys? Because they have been inconsistent. I think we can all kind of admit that, Banton will have like one great game and then all of a sudden he's, 2 for 10 from the field and he's a complete ghost. I want to see more consistency from those guys just for the sake of the starters. Because obviously we're seeing Scotty Barnes be thrust into more of a role. He's bringing the ball up the floor. He's almost being like the de facto point guard with VanVleet at the 2. Can you afford to play the starters 35, 36, 37 minutes a night? Because when you start getting into the playoffs, because the Raptors don't want to be in like that kind of play-in conversation, especially this year where like the draft is, as top heavy as it is, there's going to be some later picks with a lot of promise. You don't want to kind of be in that conversation. They obviously have higher aspirations in the playoffs. But when you get into that first round and hopefully second and beyond, how much tread is going to be on the legs of a Siakam and a VanVleet because Nick Nurse doesn't have the amount of faith that he probably should in a Banton, in a Flynn, so on and so forth. So hopefully the second unit can kind of pick up. And I do have hope that this recent stretch where they have been accumulating more minutes will lead to, bearing more fruit down the road in the season.
Yeah, great points. I first of all, I've said ad nauseum on this podcast, versions of what you're saying there. I really can't agree with you more on Nurse and what exactly is required as far as trust. Again, there's always got to throw the caveat with Nick Nurse that he's a brilliant basketball mind. I'm just a dude that runs a podcast, but yeah, how do players earn trust? Even today we saw Gary Trent Jr. get called out pretty hard. He's been sick. He has a hip issue. We've seen many players get called out in the past. I think perhaps guys like Fred, Pascal, OG, and Scotty. I can't really think of times that they've been called out, but publicly. So yeah, I totally agree with you as far as bench consistency. Obviously, guys have had big showings. I'll put my hand up and say that I kept saying, as soon as the last season ended, and especially after we acquired Otto, I've said a bunch of times this team was giving me major bench mob vibes. And not in the sense where I thought we were going to win 59 games, but I had this team winning 53, 54 games, finishing third in the East, holding back on what I think they're going to do in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, I think the bench consistency is massive because it's sort of a chicken and egg with Nurse, right? It's kind of like, are you gonna trust these guys before they fully prove it, or if they are consistent enough, then will you trust them? Like what builds confidence and what builds chemistry when it comes to second unit? And I think also to your point about the end of the season, sure, a lot of things happened, but we were broken down when we played Philly. And I think a lot of fans, myself included, were pretty optimistic going into that series. And we didn't quite realize just how beat up our team was. And obviously we got unlucky with Trent being sick and, Scotty rolling his ankle, etc. Embiid injuring like 3 of our guys in the first game. But yeah, I think that's a major point with the bench. Let's jump to you, Alan. What, other than injuries, is your big concern right now?
No, I think Chris really nailed the nail on the head with all his points there. But it's kind of hard to kind of extract the problems with the Raptors without talking about injuries. I feel like injuries is like the crux and nexus point of all the issues, whether it's consistency with the bench, with the growth of our second star player in Scotty Barnes, and seeing like how his development comes on, getting more touches, his usage rate, how all that changes. It's hard to say anything else because that's really what it is. Keeping a healthy roster on this court on the court at all times. And I truly do like when Nick Nurse has kind of built this kind of next man up rotation kind of thing. But when like 4 or 5 key players are missing, it kind of changed the dynamic of a lot of different things. And seeing Delano Banton and Malachi Flynn, to Chris's point, have a short leash, they kind of lose confidence in themselves. These are the times where they need to be like out there and being not afraid to make these mistakes and get those kind of reps and get those type of rhythms. Because I've played basketball on teams where the coach is like very kind of stern. I'm like, I always feel like they're watching me, and if I mess up right now, this is it. And every type of like that does kind of breed different things because some players are kind of mold well to that. A lot of the shooters are like, I can't miss a shot because if I miss a shot, I'm off the court. But when you're a ball handler who can have turnovers, I think that kind of messes up your rhythm of how you want to play the game, because you're not going to be as aggressive as you want to. You're going to be a little bit subsided and give away different plays and not give full intensity in a lot of different moments. So yeah, it's hard to say what the problem is because it really is the sneaky boogeyman of injuries, and hopefully they can kind of get it together and fix it up and figure it out, because, games like that Atlanta Hawks game they're going to catch up to us. A lot of those type of things where just one thing went wrong or a couple different things went wrong the fourth quarter and how to finish off a game, that's going to catch up later in the season, because you don't want to be in that purgatory zone of being sort of good, sort of bad, and you don't get a draft pick and you don't get to actually have any extra basketball when it comes to May, June. So yeah, just inconsistencies with injuries and how they bounce back. And I'm really hoping Fred kind of figures it out too. And I don't want to see a whole bunch of mileage in all these guys' legs and knees out there. Like, I really wish we can drop down these players to about 30 minutes a game, 29, and have everyone else get about 13, 15 out there too. So just kind of spread the load.
Yeah, I think spreading the load is something we're all kind of, we've been talking about for kind of years now. But I think this team, and I don't want to speak for both of you, but it sort of it gave a lot of people confidence that we have the talent, we have the veterans, we have guys who can, who Nurse can feel comfortable with. Like, I didn't put this on the docket, but let me just ask you both, like, just looking at Flynn's numbers as we were talking, he's 14 for 29 from 3. Obviously he's a smaller guy. Like, he's not going to be able to do the things that a Delano does on defense, but what more can, he's almost 50% from 3. Like, what more can he do to prove to a guy like Nurse that he deserves some regular rotation? Like, even if it's like 5 minutes a half, like, this guy's like on a team that, I think needs spacing. He's knocking down shots, and I think that's sorely needed on this squad. Yeah, let me go to you first, Chris. Like, this is just a quick kind of like throw in question here, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it kind of goes to the heart of what we've been talking about in trust.
I think the drop off is so high when you take Van Vliet from the court and you replace him with a Malachi Flynn. And I'm with
Yeah.
you on the fact that Flynn has been lining it up as of late. But when Van Vliet is back, and then you do put Flynn out there for like the 2-3 minute stretches, we have seen those spans where the Raptors will blow leads, they'll give up runs because Flynn is, he's not going to be compared to Van Vliet defensively. So if he's scoring 3 points, but he's giving up 4, how do you kind of weigh the pros and cons of that? So I see the benefits of having Flynn out there as long as he's knocking shots down. And if he's not, which, when he's not out there long enough for long stretches, and like Alan was referring to, like his confidence dwindles. Like if you take him from this recent stretch and then all of a sudden everyone comes back, Van Vliet's back in the lineup and Flynn's averaging, a handful of minutes a game, what does that do to his confidence? He's a guy that needs to have some sort of consistency in his basketball playing time. Otherwise, he's going to be, and I can't speak for him, of course, moping on the bench. He's like, where's my role? Why, Banton's going to be ahead of me as the primary backup point guard. I do see value in Flynn. But at the same time, I can also justify why Nurse does keep him on a short leash, because when his shots aren't dropping, what is he really bringing to the table?
Yeah, great point. And I think I'm going to go to you quickly, Alan. I just want to say I feel like that's sort of where I'm stuck, is kind of like this chicken and egg. Like I feel like we are going to lose some of those minutes and probably lose some games if we're going to trust Flynn and Banton to do some stuff, because I think. I think, I've never heard it talked about in that way, but comparing either of those guys to Fred, maybe that's part of what's so difficult. Like both of those guys are so far away from having Fred's impact. Like they're very far away. But also, do they still have value? So Alan, let's just go to you. Same kind of quick question. And like, I mean, I'm using Flynn as an example, but do you think that, some guys have proven themselves to maybe bring Fred's minutes away from 37.5 a game?
Well, yeah, it's hard because you have that opportunity where if you put him out there, he's going to give up a lot on the defensive end, and that kind of messes things up. But I always see a lot of parallels between us and the Warriors. Not like I don't want to be like a lot of stuff where like our championship and how we kind of responded to it afterwards, and having these two sets of rosters at the same time, like wanting to win games, but also wanting to produce our young talent. And it's hard. It's tricky. You've seen players like Kuminga right now who are not getting the minutes and opportunities out there to kind of prove themselves and grow as a player. And there are days where Steve Kerr will just like, okay, none of the starters are playing. Here are all the young guys. Do your thing, young guys. Get those touches, get those reps, get your confidence and all that different stuff. I don't know if we have the same luxury because we don't have Steph Curry. We don't have Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson on our team to like give up games like that. We have to win now. Like that's kind of the mentality. And I don't think this Raptors franchise is going to be able to accept just giving up, 2-3 games on the road when who's to say we're going to win those in the back end later on in the season. We don't have the confidence in a star like that, or even like a squad like that to recoup those later on. So it's tricky. And I truly think all Malachi Flynn needs is confidence. Because like you see the games where he has like high intensity, where he's just like got a little chip on his shoulder, and he's like he's like, oh, you saw that one go in too, Nick. Oh, you saw this one go in too, Nick. Huh? You see that? And it's like this type of playing where he's like proving to himself, but also to like the coaching staff that he belongs out there, and he does belong out there. It's just that basketball is a game of both offense and defense and production. And if you can't consistently do that, you're not going to see those minutes. And if we were the Raptors of old, where we could lose these games with Omar Cook out there, by all means, put that guy out there. But we're a competitive team and we want to win, and this franchise has got a taste for winning. So it's hard.
Yeah, well said. And I think I haven't talked about it in a long time, but I do really appreciate under the Masai era how much this team has been. You talk about the Warriors, but I also think about the Spurs. Like there's we're trying to do two things at the same time. We're trying to win and we're trying to develop. And I think sometimes that line gets blurred, and it's difficult to navigate, right? All right, here we go. Let's start with you, Alan, on this one. Yeah, just whichever way you want to take this is totally fine. But what is the biggest NBA storyline that no one is talking about right now?
I think people are starting to talk about Sacramento and the beam. I think that was a
The
lot of
beam's
fun.
fun. Yeah.
I'm totally on board. But the one secret weapon that NBA Twitter's been loving is the unleashing of Bol Bol. All right. I am so happy for him to finally go out there and play a couple minutes and get a couple points here and there, because I always root for the 7'9" whatever player out there that looks like a video game just on the court, that's dribbling the ball and just like a newborn giraffe on the court with their just little gangly legs just out there just trying their best. I love it. And I think he's been, injuries have kind of sidelined him, but now he's getting an opportunity to kind of show off how nimble and agile he is. And Orlando's a lot of fun to watch. Paolo is, honestly the rookie of the year. And they have a really good kind of fun squad out there, and it kind of reminiscent of the Kings like 3 years ago. So shout out to Bol Bol.
Bol Bol is a very good one. I'm also glad you brought up the beam. Not every time there's like my voice just cracked hard there. Not every time there's like a what am I looking for? A sort of like specific fan base joke. Is it like actually funny and weird and like have that good combination of like watching videos of Kings fans going insane when the beam is released?
Yeah.
To me is a big part of why sports can be so fun. It's not the same, but it does remind me of that amazing video when the Knicks beat the Celtics at the beginning of the year last year, where it was just a bunch of like drunk people being like, bing bong, like fuck you, bing bong, like that. To me, that's good shit. Like it's fun. And yeah, unleash Bol Bol is exactly what I'm talking about. We need to, now that needs to be a moment. Like tune into Twitter, Bol Bol's getting unleashed, all hell's breaking loose.
Like I always have sympathy for a franchise that like is going through the mud, and then they finally have a shining beacon to look at, or whether it is a shining beacon of Bol Bol or it's a literal shiny beacon like Sacramento. It's just nice to see a franchise that didn't have a lot kind of going on finally getting something to be proud of.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and you're bang on, and like that's also just fun. Like let's there's obviously I'm not against anything that's serious, getting coverage or problematic or whatever, but the fun stuff is important too. Staying silly. I'm a big fan of staying silly. Chris, what's your kind of biggest storyline that hasn't caught on yet, or you feel like it's not getting the attention it deserves?
Well, first of all, I looked at the NBA standings this morning, and the Western Conference is like a goddamn bloodbath. One game separating the 1 and the 8th seed in the West, and the first team no one really expected was the Utah Jazz, and I may touch on them a little bit later. But a team that I've kind of been gravitating towards, and it's more so because of one specific player, Damian Lillard. I'm really high on the Portland Trailblazers right now. 10-7, not exactly blowing away anybody in the West, but no one is, because like I said, one game separates the 1 and the 8th seed. But they're just kind of coming off like a good vibes team. And we always have these discussions every year about Lillard. Why isn't he demanding a trade from Portland? Why isn't he wanting to go to like a bigger market where he can compete for a championship? But he's always been kind of staying true to himself, saying, I want to be a Trailblazer. I want to win in Portland. And now one of his better teams in years, with some pieces who have really stepped up, like a Jeremy Grant, for example. Like a lot of people wrote him off. He's shooting the lights out, and he's playing, some of the best basketball of his career.
Yeah.
Anthony Simons. Like they had 3 guys that were averaging over 20 points per game, which is rare in this NBA. And then obviously Nurkic is still playing his role as the big man. I just like that Lillard, is feeling good about his chances. I may regret this, a few months down the road when Portland maybe, falls off and these conversations about Lillard come up again. But just the way this team has been assembled, it kind of reminds me of like what the Raptors are doing, like with these lanky forwards that could play multiple positions. Portland's really excelling on that front. And Lillard, is at the forefront of that success, although he has been missing time due to injuries. I really like what Portland is doing. And like what the Utah Jazz are doing. I mean, some of these under radar teams like Oklahoma City, they're 7-10, but that's honestly better than I envisioned for them. A lot of these like lower tier teams that a lot of people kind of predicted would be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes are having really strong starts to the season. So I have no clue who's going to be at the bottom of the ladder come, draft lottery time. But right now, specifically Portland, I'm kind of enjoying the run that they're on. And I am optimistic about their chances, come March, April, May.
Yeah, I think Portland's a really good one too. And back to kind of like Alan's like, talking about Bull and like fun vibes, like the whole Portland kind of like the way that they've been like ending games and like mobbing. I mean, I guess Memphis as well, but this idea, like the camaraderie clearly is there. Like that is a group of guys that is having a fun time. And I think that, in my experience as an NBA fan, it's rare that doesn't translate to winning. So, I mean, and Dame's always been that kind of guy. And I also like, yeah, I feel like you brought up a bunch of good points because, Beal, Dame, they're these guys who kind of get this, when are you going to request a trade? It's weird because, like, okay, like scrambled. My head's a bit scrambled here, but like two different points I'm making at the same time is like, as fans, we get frustrated when a star requests a trade, and you have these two guys like Beal and Dame who are really sticking it out with these franchises that you assume they would request a trade from, and I've always appreciated that neither has as like pushed that. And it's cool to me that they haven't. And, in that sense, like I hope for their success. But yeah, Trailblazers are really fun. I love that as a pick here. Mine is, sorry, the last point I want to jump on there, Chris, is that at the beginning of the year, I kept saying to people, like, I have no idea what it looks like when the Pacers, the Jazz, and the Spurs tank, because I've never seen that in my NBA fandom. And I think what we're seeing, I think the Spurs are being like, no, we're tanking. But I think we're seeing the Jazz and the Pacers, like the structure is a bit too good. Like they have a foundation and a culture that's stronger. And I'm sure they'll gut their team so that they do worse, but early on, you have the Pistons, you have the Rockets, but I think the Wembanyama sweepstakes are not quite as aggressive as people assume they would be. Again, a lot of the season to go. We'll see who gets injured, and that will impact things. Plus new teams like perhaps the Hornets sort of thing. But
yeah, and I just want to jump off that point as well.
Yeah.
Like organizations choose to tank. Players don't tank.
Yes.
Players take pride in what they do on a basketball court.
Yeah.
And even if you're putting out like second, third tier guys, they're going to play their butts off because again, some of these like seldom used guys, this may be one of the few opportunities that they get to play. So if coaches or organizations start actively trying to tank, some of these guys might excel in more of a larger role. And that's why we're seeing like these Utahs and these Indianas and Washingtons, like, these not exactly with like superstar level like cores, but they have like maybe one or two guys like all-star talented players. And then they have a bunch of reserves kind of backing them up and saying, you know what, let's make the most of it. We're not trying to get a Victor Wembanyama or a Scoot or what have you. Like we want to win basketball games. And that's what I'm kind of enjoying about this NBA season is kind of like, a lot of these teams aren't being complacent. They're just like, let's go out there. Let's make the most of it. If, and again, I reserve the right to change my mind on this, is like we get into the new year and all of a sudden, they realize, maybe we are going to be falling below 500. Maybe we should just kind of go all in. But at the same time, like I said, players don't tank. It's the teams that are choosing to do these kinds of, losing skids to get higher picks.
That's a great point. Sorry, you got some, Alan?
No, yeah, I agree. I feel like one thing I felt like with this NBA season is like it's been like a turning shift. Like I feel like these young guys are now activated and like the old guards, like no one's afraid of them. No one's afraid of LeBron. No one's afraid of the Warriors. Like Warriors coming off a championship. I feel like a lot of teams just have that game circled. They're like, oh, this is our time to be on the national stage. Guess what? We're going to show you. We're going to punch you right in the mouth. And, we saw that with Sacramento with with the Brooklyn Nets. Like they come out there and they want to win. And to that point of just a bunch of role players, like when you look at what happened in Utah, those are just like a bunch of pieces that were just kind of put together that individually aren't necessarily the greatest players, but when you put them together, a bunch of role players with no specific person who needs that many touches, you're just kind of having the only idea that the ball has to do. Like there's no what am I trying to say? Like there's no, like it doesn't have to flow through one single person. The whole idea is the ball has to just go in the net in 24 seconds. That's all it is. And they all just buy into that and believe in that. And it's working. It's working. And I think especially with this new NBA with more shots and more field goals, teams like that are going to experience a lot of different success during the NBA season. Now, is this going to be something that's going to be successful when it comes down to playoff basketball? And it's just like, we just need one person to get a bucket. Who's to say? But it's worked so well in the regular season, and enough that it's going to keep away some of these like bigger name teams, the Lakers and Brooklyn, from even getting into a play-in, because Atlanta really wanted to play well, or Utah really wanted to play well for a lot of times. Like it's going to knock a lot of these teams out there, but it's really good regular season basketball. And I'm happy a lot of these players are being activated and feeling more confident in themselves.
Yeah, great points. And, I think the last thing you said, really just really connected with me. This is really good regular season basketball. And, for so many years, there's been a lot of talk about the regular season as just this sort of like, kind of like thing that we all have to go through and not enjoy. And, I feel like so far anyways, it's been really enjoyable. And, this isn't so much connected to the Wembanyama thing, but since the Warriors Raptors title, or finals rather, I joked a million times that I felt like the Raptors, it's the same time as the ending of Game of Thrones. I feel like we kind of broke the wheel of that era of the super team, and ushered in an era of parity. And I think not only there been so much parity since, no two teams have showed up in the finals. Since that, like the Warriors came back like many years later, but like no teams in a row. And if we do, I think one more year of two different teams, it's going to tie a stretch in the 70s as the time when there's been the most parity in the NBA. And to further that point, I was just looking at the NBA point differential, and again, I'm not that much of a stats head, so I don't have an exact memory, but I feel like there's always 1, 2, maybe 3 teams that have a win differential that's like over 10 or around 9. And currently the highest teams is Cleveland with 7.4 and the Suns with 7.2. So there isn't a team that's like wrecking the league. And I think that's going to be the case for the whole year. So yeah, I think it's all, it all works together. Like you're saying, Alan, possessions, young players showing up, like there's so many different factors, but yeah, it should be fun to watch, guys. That takes us to the end of the pod here. I want to thank you both so much for being on. I'm going to bring Maddie D in here, just to, plug some of the important stuff here at the end. But first, let's go to you, Chris. Yeah, what do you have going on? What do you feel like you want to plug? Obviously, we'll put your socials in there, but yeah, what do you want to let people know?
First of all, thank you guys for inviting me back on your podcast. I'm honestly like always truly honored to be invited on any podcast, especially one as distinguished as yours. And I love you guys, and I think what you're doing is great. So thank you very much. Follow me on Twitter as long as it's around. Yeah, at Walder Sports. Instagram at Walder Sports, Hive, or whatever social media platform emerges. I'm sure I'll be there in some way, shape, or form. My podcast, the Walder Sports Cast, will be returning in the new year. I'm getting married in a couple of weeks, so that's kind of my priority right now.
Yeah,
heading over to Disney World on the 2nd of December. So looking forward to that. Obviously, having a good time, and then. Yeah, again, just hit me up on social media while you can, and until Elon Musk kind of destroys everything. So see you on the Twitter sphere.
Amazing. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Congratulations as well.
Thank you.
Alan, what's up? What do you want to let people know? What do you want to promote? If you're getting married as well. Cheers.
Well, yes, I'm actually getting double married at double Disneyland. So that's
this guy's crazy.
No, yeah, make sure to just watch the Great Canadian Baking Show. I know the season finale just aired. Go watch it on CBC and CBC Gem. Also, we have a holiday episode coming up next week, so I'll watch that too as well. On the personal note, yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at the Alan Shane. Alan Shane on Instagram, Alan Shane Lewis on Hive. I finally got the Alan Shane Lewis username. Take that, Alan Shane Lewis, who's the pianist, who doesn't post anything from 2015. Everywhere I go, that guy's there just holding it up. I saw his LinkedIn
So
page.
good at the piano.
Terrible. But yeah, and also, yeah, the extremely mid-range show that's every 2 weeks. The next episode is November 30th. So come watch that. Same kind of thing. It's a comedy basketball show. We do different things. Last time we played Quiplash, just some NBA prompts. So check it out. And if you're gonna be at the Raptors Mavs game, I'm gonna be there talking to people. So show up and say what's up.
Amazing. That the last time you did that was incredible. You got some good reactions from people, and it's fun seeing, like, some fans, you're like, oh man, yeah, this person's like, they know what they're talking about. And then some fans are just like, LeBron, worst player who ever lived. and you're like, oh man, this runs the gamut. Let me throw to my amazing producer, Maddie D. My Maddie D. Tell the folks what's up, what they need to know about our pod and, Raptors Republic and everything good.
Right. Yeah. Go to raptorsrepublic.com. You can listen to our podcast there, as well as to dunkspodcast.com. That's our own website. And on all the podcatchers, if you're on YouTube and you saw the couple of clips that we put up, you can listen to the full episode on the podcatchers as well. Make sure that you, in whatever way you're taking this in, click on the guest names and they will take you to their socials so you can follow them. And the paywall is up for the editorial content. We are still pushing that hard. $6 a month for Raptors Republic paywall. Please support. These guys put a lot of work into their writing. And the only other thing I'll say is that the live event that was supposed to happen on the 29th has been canceled. So it will be rescheduled in the new year, apparently. And if you paid, you'll get your money back soon.
Amazing. Thank you, Maddie D. Greatest person on earth. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thanks for everyone for supporting. I went and saw a music show. I'm so old now. I went and saw a music show. But yeah, a bunch of people came up to me about the pod. So yeah, that felt great. Shout out to Megan. But yeah, we are done. We're good to go. Please, Maddie, if you feel like we're all wrapped up, just give me those sweet words I love so much. Okay.
Listen to full episodes of the Confederacy of Dunks only on the Rapcast.